Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast with Stuart Fensterheim, LCSW, your source for the latest tips and practical down-to-earth advice on creating emotionally connected, thriving relationships. Now, here's Stuart.
Hi there, and welcome to the Couples Expert Relationship Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert, and today is May the 10th. And we are celebrating Mother's Day here at the Fensterheim household, as well as all over the country. Mother's Day is an interesting sort of dilemma for a lot of people because Mother's Day, what happens is you have families that are trying to get together and trying to make it work in celebrating the mothers of the world. The problem is that when you have a family and you're an adult, there are many different mothers and many different families that have different celebrations, and how they participate in Mother's Day can sometimes be a real challenge. So I wanted to sort of just acknowledge that today, being Mother's Day, can sometimes not be the happiest thing for all people. And I wrote a blog recently on Mother's Day, and I hope my listeners who are on my mailing list received my Happy Mother's Day email. And if you're not on my mailing list, you can always sign up at my website, which is www.thecouplesexpertscottsdale.com. And on the homepage, there is a form that you could fill out to become a member of my email list. I also did something really right, which sometimes can be difficult for me with regards to making sure that my mother knows how important she is to me. So what I did is I decided to do a blog on Mother's Day. And I write blogs for lots of different reasons, one of them being to try to keep my name out there, because what I want to do is to allow all of you and my listeners, and even people that don't know me, to really get a sense of who I am and how much I really care about what I do and relationships, and that my dedication to improving the world one relationship at a time is very real. So what I did is I blog quite often just to keep my name out there so people can know how to get hold of me if they want my assistance in counseling them with their relationship. So I decided to do this twofold. One is to keep my blog going, because that's important. Second is to really send a message to my mother that she truly is important to me. So I wrote a blog, which was a Happy Mother's Day blog for my mother, and put it on my blog. And she's on my mailing list, of course, and mother would do that. She likes to get and see what I'm doing. So she received the email like everybody else. And in my email, I put a little clip for my listeners that if they want to see the Mother's Day blog that I wrote to wish my mother happy Mother's Day, to go ahead and click over. And my mother did see it. And she called me up all sort of gushy and telling me how much she loves me. And she said some of the really sweetest, kindest things. And I think sometimes we have to get creative in this, just like in relationships. We have to get creative in how we send the message to our partners, our wives and girlfriends, just how important they are to us. So what I want to encourage all of you to do this Mother's Day, although the likelihood is that you'll be listening to this after Mother's Day, and if you didn't do what I'm suggesting, I highly recommend you go back, you tell your wives, girlfriends that you really blew it, because you did. What I need all of you to do is to really say Happy Mother's Day and tell your wives and girlfriends and your mothers just how important they are to you. Not because of big things, but the little things that they do. that the little things that they do really are meaningful, and you want to acknowledge that you really can see the efforts that they put into this relationship. I think you will really pay a high dividend for you. The other thing I want to do today, obviously, is do our second podcast in our series on infidelity. And this is a piece of this that is so important. And I think for me, the emotional infidelity is the most difficult one. I think it's really black and white when I start thinking about infidelity and I think about having sex with someone outside your marriage. I am clear that that's just not okay. But what I'm not so clear about, although as I think about this clearer and clearer, that having a relationship with another woman or another partner where you divulge and share some of your innermost feelings is a really big violation. And that violation, to me, is even bigger than having sex with another woman. And the reason behind that for me is having sex, for most people, can be separated out, the emotions. But when the emotions are invested in a relationship with someone outside of your marriage, outside of the person that you said that you would devote your life to, there is something inherently wrong with that. And what we want to do is make sure that nobody other than your partner knows you better than anyone else. And if you're going to be vulnerable with someone outside of your marriage, to me, that's a real violation. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And we're going to talk about how do you come back when you, as a couple, learn that this has happened, learn that you thought you were that special one, and now it turns out that you may not be so special. I mean, when you begin to think about that, when you think about how am I going to really come to terms with the fact that my partner made a choice to talk about things that they don't share with me, I begin to go, how important am I? But what I'm hoping we also do in that process is begin to ask ourselves, are there roadblocks that you're putting up, that I'm putting up, that get in the way of my wife feeling comfortable and feeling like they can do that? So we're going to talk a tremendous amount about this, and I'm going to try very hard to make it very real and very practical so that all of you will have a model that you could use, whether you're in treatment or not in counseling, that you together as a couple will be able to work on improving this aspect of the relationship to making the two of you a couple that is special than any other couple and have a relationship that you are so proud of because you know that the two of you are best friends and are only talking with one another about the things that matter. Before I really begin and get into all the meaty stuff having to do with today's podcast, which is on emotional affairs, I wanted to remind everyone that all my show notes and transcripts are on my website at www.thecouplesexpertscottsdale.com, and that you don't need to take notes, and we can get a copy of this along with some of the resources from this podcast on my website. And what I typically do, and I plan to do with this one as well, is offer a free PDF guide to the subscribers of my podcast that they can receive in addition to the material that I'm going to cover, some extra resources. And I'm going to have a link at the end of the podcast that I will give all of you and that you could also find on my show notes for those that are subscribers to my podcast, that you can receive a free PDF guide on how to cope with this issue in your relationship. So stick around and you'll be getting that information. The other thing I'm going to do is a contest this year, or this episode. And the contest is going to be for those that subscribe to my podcast. I feel very strongly that those people who subscribe to my podcast really do have a leg up on other people for having relationships that are going to be secure and close and stable. So I am going to be offering a contest for anyone that over the next month subscribes to my podcast. And what I'd like you to do is take a picture or a screenshot of the subscription page and send it to me. What I'm going to do is have a monthly drawing for the next month. And each person, what I will do is I will pick out one of the names from the people that sent me the emails, and I will be giving away a certificate for 2 for dinner at a local restaurant. So if you want to do that, I think that would be great, and it will hopefully be fun for all of you as well, because I really do think those subscribers that get the episodes do benefit a great deal in their relationships, and that's important to me. And that way you could get all the episodes immediately downloaded to you. The other is I'm having sort of a friendly bet with a friend of mine to see who can have the most subscribers in 1 week. So please get your name out. I'm hoping that I can kick his butt. Anyway, let's go on to talking about our episode for today, which is an episode on emotional infidelity. What exactly is an emotional affair? And it's typically, people think of this having to do with people who are married, but the reality is an emotional affair can be any two people in a relationship. And what happens in an emotional affair, quite often it starts out very innocently. And the definition of an emotional affair, just to sort of get to that, is an emotional affair is when you have a relationship with someone outside of your relationship or marriage in this situation. And when that relationship grows and develops into a relationship that takes on a significance to you, where you not only feel like you're friends, but you begin to share some very personal things, particularly deep feelings that you have about things that you aren't necessarily sharing with your wife, partner, or girlfriend. So that basically the issue is that there is an emotional bond that gets created. And typically for a lot of folks, the feelings that go with sharing that, of how you feel about this person, grows deeper and deeper with time. And eventually it becomes where you crave that time together, because the feelings that are generated and the feelings that you're having about how good you feel about each other and how deeply you feel about one another grows to a point that it takes on a increased importance that sometimes can overshadow how you feel about your wives and girlfriends. The statistics of this are pretty high. It says that there was a study done recently from the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists that emotional affairs have increased in frequency and intensity over the last few years. And what they're basically saying that about 15% of wives and 25% of husbands have had these emotional affairs. Now, the likelihood of those turning sexual, I think, are pretty high. But when we look at emotional affairs, we're usually talking about an emotional commitment or an emotional bond that doesn't have the physical sexual component. Now, I don't know how many of you remember the movie When Harry Met Sally, but I'm going to play a short clip on that, and then I want to come back and talk about what we're listening to and how it may relate to this topic.
We are just going to be friends, okay?
Great, friends. It's the best thing. You realize, of course, that we could never be friends.
Why not?
What I'm saying is, and this is not a come on in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
That's not true. I have a number of men friends and there is no sex involved.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
You only think you do.
You're saying I'm having sex with these men without my knowledge?
No, what I'm saying is they all want to have sex with you.
They do not.
Do too.
They do not.
Do too.
How do you know?
Because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
So you're saying that a man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive?
No, you pretty much want to nail him too.
So the question is, can men and women be friends without it turning sexual? Men and women could be friends without it turning sexual. But I think that's the wrong topic. I think the topic isn't whether guys want to sleep with and have sex with the women who they are friendly with because guys just want to have sex. Or what happens is that guys don't admit it as much, nor do women, that they crave the emotional connection. And I think we all crave that. What's sad about this topic, more than anything, is that the significant relationships in our lives at times don't provide us with the connection needs that we all have, and that we have to look elsewhere. One of the things I say over and over again, it's one of these sort of sayings that happens in my office probably once a day, if not more than once a day, when I say there's nothing worse than feeling lonely and looking over and seeing someone lying next to you. That the loneliness of having someone in your life that you feel that disconnected from is the most excruciating pain than any other pain. And the pain and anguish that comes from that, I think, has all of us searching out and looking for some place we can get those needs met. The only place that should occur is in your relationship. If you and your partner don't have that, you need to find a mechanism to talk about this and then have it become a priority in your marriage and in your relationship to have that kind of relationship. So what typically happens, as we were talking, is that people meet people through work, through other associations, and then you begin to find someone, and what people talk about is that we just clicked. It was powerful. It was intense. It was really, it hit us from like nothing else. And we were caught up in it. And before I knew it, we were talking, we were sneaking around, we were finding ways to connect on a regular basis. And I began to get deceptive and lie about this with my partner. So some of the criteria to look at in finding out if your relationships that you do have, which are friendships, are truly relationships that are healthy or not, is ask yourself a couple of questions. The first question you want to ask yourself is, do you confide more to your friend than your partner? Do you spend a tremendous amount of emotional energy on that person and ending up sharing things that you don't even share with your partner? And these could include your hopes, your dreams about life, your future, things that you would actually like your life to be filled with, and things that might actually connect you to your partner, and that your partner together, the two of you, can talk about how to increase the satisfaction in the relationship. So that's the first question. Do you confide more? 2, do you discuss negative feelings or intimate details about your marriage or relationship with a friend, but not with your partner? And what most people say to me when I talk about that, they said, oh, I can't bring that up. They'll be offended. They'll be angry. It would just cause a big problem. I'm not really even sure that this is important to me. If it's not, why are you talking about it? So the question really becomes, are you discussing things with someone other than your partner that topic needs to be discussed with your partner? The third question is, are you keeping it a secret? Are you letting your partner know that you're spending time with this person? And are you keeping secret the amount of time that you're spending with that person? And that we have to include with that not only the things that we talk about or where we're interacting with that person, but what about emails, texting, Skype, on Facebook, playing games on Facebook, interacting in a way that would be defined as courting kinds of behaviors that would build a relationship and have the two of you feeling like this relationship is really important. Are you having thoughts about this person that you would have about someone that you're trying to get into a relationship with? Songs, experiences. Are you thinking things like, he'd love this song, or, oh, I know this would be something they would like? Do you go when you're on a trip or on a vacation? Are you looking in the gift shops for things that this person would take value in and would think highly of you for getting? And are you sharing that you're purchasing these things for that person with your partner? Through the years, I have sort of gone back and forth with this in terms of how I feel and how strongly my recommendations become. And as I have seen the absolute tragedy that comes from these types of relationships, my advice gets stronger and stronger that you need to terminate all contact. And if that means quitting your job, or if that means moving into a different department, doing something at work that you don't like as much, you do it. And the reason you do it is because, is any job really worth losing your marriage over? You know, we have to think about why we work. Do we work because we love to work, or do we work because we found something we enjoy and it's something to sustain us and feel good about ourselves, and more importantly, help us with having a good time with the people in our life that are dear to us? I think that work is relative. I don't think it has any stretch of the imagination to be as important, if not more important, than your marriage. And if you're willing to sacrifice your marriage just so you can have contact with this individual, you're in serious trouble. You need to take a really hard look at this and decide what's going on for you. Why would you be willing to sacrifice a marriage over a friendship? What you have to figure out is what needs are not being met in your relationship with your spouse, and focus on changing that interaction. The boundary here is really about where the energy needs to go. What we know through all the research and everything that we know about building and establishing healthy, positive relationships that are about feeling connected and important in the world is you need to focus on that need that is not being met in your relationship. You need to work together with your spouse. And truthfully, I think you need to let them know that the relationship is in trouble. What's absolutely not fair and that I see time and time again is that people come into my office when an affair has been discovered, an emotional affair, and the partner says, I didn't even know he was unhappy. Now, we can all sit here and go, how could she not know? How could he not know? But people get caught up in their lives. And what we have to do is let our partners know when things are going awry, when you are feeling pulled away from your spouse and see yourself beginning to have these feelings come up for someone else. What we do need to talk about is the increase in all of the relationships, emotional affairs that are being established at work. I think it's an interesting sort of dilemma because I recall, when you're in college and you're in a dorm and you're attending parties and you're doing a lot of other things, there is many opportunities for meeting people. And those relationships and your socialization is really very easy for you. But now, as you've aged and you're married and trying to develop a social life, it's so much more complicated because there aren't as many opportunities. If you have children, you can go and meet people in those situations. But if not, most of us work very hard and spend most of our time at work. And that is where those relationships get developed. Now, there's an old saying that people hope no one gets offended by, which is you don't fish from the company pier. What that really means is that having a relationship with someone who you work with is just open to so many problems. And as a matter of fact, I had a couple that I saw, and the gentleman was having a relationship, and the relationship at work fell apart. And he ended up having to leave his place of employment because the woman that he was having a relationship with just really went ballistic and basically was taking work times, was looking at his emails at work, was really tracking him down and was trying to have these drawn-out discussions about their relationship while they were attempting to work. And it became known that there was a problem. And then the discovery that they had had a relationship, which they had been keeping secretive, came right out and basically went right to a complaint, and work began to think about liability issues. And before you know it, they had asked both people to leave. Those type of things are not uncommon. What is so important here is that really needing to separate out the workplace from any other relationship that you have, that even if you're going to have an affair or an emotional affair or even a sexual affair, as we talked about last time, you don't do it at work. Here are the signs that the workplace relationships have gone way too far and something to really pay attention to. When you end up going out to lunch with someone and that after lunch you can't get the thoughts of lunch out of your head, that's a date. That's not a social lunch. If you have gotten to the point where there are sort of affectionate interactions or sort of stepping over boundaries, such as, do you pick lint off his blazer for him or ruffle up his hair or touch him when it wouldn't be necessary? That's not a good thing. Do you pay attention to how you look before you see this person in a different way than anyone else? Do you buy new clothes and dress up because you know that someone that you're having lunch with or that you see at work likes certain types of outfits? Does your partner know how much time you're spending with this person? And if so, what do you tell them that you're doing? Are you being upfront and honest about it? Do you make it a point to find ways to spend time together, maneuver schedules, switch appointments, just so you can see this person? Probably the last one, and I think is the best one, is would you be comfortable if your partner videotaped the meeting and the interaction and watched it? Would you feel guilty, or would you feel absolutely comfortable with them knowing exactly what took place between the two of you? Those are some important questions to ask yourself. So now that we've sort of talked a little bit about emotional affairs, and let's say you're caught up in one, the next section really is going to be about how do we stop the affair, and then how do we cope with the fact that this affair is part of your relationship. Before I do that, though, I want to make sure that you guys are all aware of a commitment that I've been thinking about that I'm going to be making to all my listeners, and that has to do with my podcast and the schedule. I am going to be releasing weekly podcasts for the first 3 weeks of every month, and my plan is to have them available to you on Thursday. So I'm going to record them and have them up on my website and ready to go by Thursday, and you should anticipate having a new podcast every Thursday. Anyway, let's talk about the affairs and how to make sure that they have stopped and also how to cope with it. What you really need to do in order for that to happen is you have to avoid having direct conversations. You really have to be clear with the person that you're in the relationship with that this is not something that you're willing to continue, and you have to stop. And the stopping is not a debate. It's not open to dialogue. It's absolutely something that you're going to do. The next step for you is you have to figure out what led you to make this connection with this person. One of the critical things is figuring that out, because in order for your relationship with your wife to survive this, they have to know that you are totally resolved with not having any more contact with this person, and that the needs that you were getting fulfilled from that person are now being fulfilled by your wife. Without that security that she is now or he is now meeting those needs, the instability and the insecurity is going to be sky high forever. So you have to be willing to be vulnerable about the things that have been going on and that you're going to do it. The other thing is you must take responsibility for what you did, that you did something to really screw up the relationship that you had, and really have to do your part in offering your wife or husband or partner a new sense of security that they feel will never return. You need to give them what they need to feel safe. Some of the time, that's going to feel like you're in prison. And the truth is, you put yourself there. So you are going to have to do some things that are going to sometimes feel like it's a violation of your sense of yourself and your pride, and that you shouldn't have to cower like this. But the truth is, you made and broke a vow and broke a commitment that you made to your partner, and there is going to be consequences of those. There really is 7 stages that each of relationship needs to go through in order to survive this. The first step is that the person that had the affair has to be willing to stop the affair. Without that being 100% of a commitment that you've made, and that's going to be in spite of the other person that you were having the relationship with feeling hurt and injured and sad, and probably trying to reach you to talk you out of it. You have to be willing to do that. You have to promise to stop having all contact with that person. If you're someone at work, the contact is not going to be alone, and it's going to be just work related. You need to keep your encounters with that person entirely businesslike. And if they start having a discussion with you about something other than business, you walk away. You need to answer with your partners any and all questions that they may have. You need to show your spouse empathy no matter what. They are going to be rageful at times. They're going to be yelling and screaming. You're going to have to be willing to show them empathy and understanding of the anguish that you've put them through. But more importantly, you have to keep talking and listening. The talking and listening has to be not only superficial kinds of things, but real, vulnerable discussions, an open dialogue about what each of you needs in a relationship. When these interactions are going on, the person that has been betrayed has to be willing to ask questions. The only questions that I would recommend you stay away from are sexual ones, to asking the questions about whether or not they had sex together. Your partner has shared with you that this has been a non-sexual, strictly emotional relationship. If you doubt them, which you will, and if you say that to them publicly, they're going to shut down on you. And you need to have both of you willing to have open dialogues. So you need to stay away from those kinds of questions. You have to balance the rage that you're going to feel with information that is going to allow you to move on. Now, I've talked in the last podcast with the sexual infidelity about limiting the affair talk. That is also true here. And one of the things I think I did not talk about, which was the time limit, meaning that when you do have dialogues about this, and you will and you should, they can't go on for hours and hours and hours, and they can't go on through the night and late night when both of you are tired and exhausted, because things will get said that need to be unsaid, and then you're having to heal on new things. So what I recommend is no conversations after 9 p.m. And if you work late nights, you may have to schedule it at a weekend or wait. Or if you guys work during the day, which most people do, you may have to just start it early enough, because I'm going to limit this talk to 2 hours maximum. After 2 hours, I want you to stop and say, we have to wait for the next time. One of the things that's clear is you're not going to forgive easily, and you're not going to forget for a very long time. And you shouldn't forgive easily. And the reason you shouldn't is this relationship is in a critical, important stage, and it's at risk for dissolving. And if you just quickly say, I'm sorry, or you quickly forgive, that's not okay. So we need to make sure that both the partner that's hurt is able to really take in the forgiveness, and you have to know it's not going to come easily or quickly, but it can't come too late, because of it. If you wait too long for this, for both the forgiveness and the apology, the relationship could be scarred. So what you have to do is work really hard together at getting to a place where you both begin to really believe each other. And there's a specific mechanism that I'm going to actually have a free PDF on how to do this, that I'm going to share a link with you all my listeners, at the end of this podcast, on how do you receive a 7-step guide. I believe it's 7, a guide to how do you have and how do you make true apologies, and how do you know if a true apology is there, and once it's given, how do you deal with moving on. The other is you need to find support from many people, but be careful who you look for support from. They can't be the naysayers, the ones that say you're stupid to keep working at this. Once you've made this decision to work through this marriage, to work through this relationship, you should feel good about that and positive when both of you are working together. And don't listen to anyone that may say to you, you're being foolish to do this. There clearly is a road back from an emotional affair, and that is making the relationship with you and your partner the absolutely most important thing to the two of you. I had mentioned earlier in the podcast that I would give you guys a free PDF. So I've created a guide called Emotional Affair, the Relief Guide. But to make it easier for you guys, it's going to be the EA Relief Guide. The website to download the free PDF is going to be the Couples Expert Scottsdale.lead pages, that's LEAD pages, PAGES.net/EA-relief-guide. So that's https:// the Couples Expert Scottsdale.lead pages.net/EA-relief-guide. And you'll be able to download the free PDF right there for you. One of the last things I want to say is that when you're ready to forgive, forgiveness is really important for both you and your partner. The partner that had the affair needs to forgive themselves, and you need to forgive your partner for the betrayal that you're going to feel. When the two of you really acknowledge how important you are to one another, that forgiveness of self and other is really easier to do and so important to do. Lastly, and to summarize, and I apologize that this podcast has gone as long as it has. I'm trying to keep my podcast to about 30 to 40 minutes, but these topics are so critically important that I don't want to rush it. Let me give you just some tips of things that I would recommend to help with your intimacy with an emotional affair as part of your relationship. Number one is to really take to heart having a weekly date and doing things together that are just fun. During these dates, do not talk about the relationship. Do not talk about the emotional affair. This is a time to reconnect and to just have fun together. Make sure that there is plenty of affection in the relationship and that you're touching each other many, many, many times a day, just letting each other know how important you are to each other. I want you to try to have some physical intimacy. If that is something that is just really too difficult right now because of the pain with the emotional affair, that's understandable. But as soon as you can get yourself back to the place where you can have some touch and sexuality, I think that helps bond people in a marriage. And it's actually another podcast I'm going to be doing having to do with sexuality. The next is to really try as much as possible not to let irritations build up and learn how to talk with one another without it getting ugly, filled with conflict. And I think the more that you work on the closeness and bond that you have with one another, the easier that would be. The other thing is really making sure that you're communicating on a daily basis, if not many times during the day, using our technology and just really staying in touch with one another, encouraging each other, letting each other know how important you are, that you've not left their thoughts. This is important if there was an emotional affair, because the concern is going to be that when you're not together, that there may be something going on that is inappropriate. So you really want to have each other stay in touch as often as possible and as much as possible. And just be so incredibly supportive of one another and showing how much you care. This is something that you can absolutely overcome and get beyond, to have a relationship where both of you feel loved and important to each other. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode with your host, Stuart Fensterheim. You're one step closer to reigniting that fiery passion with your partner. For more information and your 30-minute free phone consultation with Stuart, visit www.thecouplesexpertscottsdale.com. We'll see you next time.